further ado, why don't we
Wow.
say happy weekend to everybody. Welcome back. We missed last weekend because I was taking advantage of a 3-day holiday in the US and not having to think. So now I've got to learn how to do this all over again. But we have yet another guest speaker, discussion leader today, all the way from the West Coast of the United States. For some of you, that's not that far.
Dan can almost walk here.
It's an hour and a half, I think I checked, or an hour and 15 minutes. I was curious.
Something like that. Yeah, it was. It is. Something like that.
This gentleman's been calling for 50 years, probably takes break at night to go to sleep. He's a Caller Lab accredited caller coach. And guy loves teaching, both dancers and callers.
Yep.
So we're going to see the loving callers part today. He's also done a lot specifically with singing calls and studied voice, not only square dance calling wise, but operatic. And we will be trying to learn a little bit more about him at some other date on some of the techniques that apply. A man who's not short on energy and frequently capable of passing that on to the callers and to us, I hope. So looking to be entertained by this entertainer this morning, I would like to present Scot Byars. It's all yours, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, of course, Dan's been in one of the caller schools that I taught with Ken Ratusi. By the way, Ken likes Ratusi rather than Ratucci. His son likes Ratucci, but Ken likes Ratusi. Erin's trying to pull this up on the computer. That's all right.
And one note here,
Yes.
just a tech note. We're getting an awful lot of feedback and ringing. So if everybody could mute themselves when they're not talking actively, that would be super appreciated.
Okay.
Over to you, Scott.
Thank you.
You don't have to worry about that.
I don't know.
Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention when Don was asking about his intro, Scott is a staff caller on Crown Records.
Right. I've recorded basically 2 records with them. But I am a staff caller with them, and trying to pull it up. It doesn't look like you're getting it.
It's up.
It's up. Okay. Can you
there.
make it bigger?
I can try.
Okay.
I don't
'Cause
know.
I can hardly see it.
And one thing that I forgot to mention also is that kibitzing Scott and also helping him visually and as IT is his wife, Erin. So let's say good morning to Erin also.
Good morning.
Which is really weird because she hates mornings.
Only for you guys would I get up at this time of the morning. All right, let's get started.
That's not true.
Can you read it now?
But no, I can't. That's all right.
The only mornings that I hate are the ones where I have to get up.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Well, it's way better than the ones where you don't get up.
True. So let's talk a little bit about my background and why I am a square dance caller when I studied opera in high school, which is the first thing I did. I started looking at voice and looking at music and stuff like that. I started doing opera, and my first thought was, how can an opera singer be a square dance caller? I mean, it doesn't make much sense. So, but I found that it works out well. I learned my techniques that I use in voice and in opera really helps in the square dance world. It allows me to articulate better so people can hear the calls better, which is one of the things that I say. If you can't hear me, then I have no use being there. I mean, if the dancers can't hear you, you shouldn't be there. having trouble reading this. Can you put it in a view where I can see all the individual?
No,
No.
I'm sorry, I
Okay.
can't. That I can't do. I can make it
All
as
right.
big as you want, but then you can only see part of each line.
Okay. Well, the first thing you need to know is, what is showmanship? What do we call showmanship? What is it? Showmanship is basically how you present something to the world, how you present to your little world, which might be in the square dance world. Do you present it? There are many ways of applying showmanship to square dancing or anything else. In the opera world, you do probably about 23 things at once. In the square dance world, as a caller, we do 43 things at once. From keeping our material working, keeping the flow of the dancers, all of that. 43 things you've got to do at once by being a square dance caller. 23 to be an opera singer. So to me, that's a big thing. What is showmanship? Showmanship is the act of being able to entertain the dancers somewhere, some way, somehow. How do you entertain them? Well, one of the things you can do is you can have a good voice. There are a lot of callers that have a great voice that everybody knows. They know who the callers are that have a good voice. Cal Golden is one who used to have the golden voice, they called him. The man with the golden voice, Cal Golden. There are a lot of callers out there who can sing. There are callers out there who can yodel. That's another thing that we do as callers, is yodeling, which is basically another form of you using your voice properly. You can entertain the dancers with jokes. I always think of Ed Foote. Now, not particularly good jokes, but he entertains the dancers with jokes all the time. Randall and Holmes from the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, when I say that.
San Diego, but
Well, you're right,
enough.
San Diego. Close enough.
they were famous for their costumes and comedy routines. And Stephen will absolutely remember some of their crazy stuff.
They would one of the tips, they would get out there and they would have tuxedos on, and when they turned around, they had no pants on. So all you saw were their bare cheeks and their boxer shorts, and they had a tuxedo on. So that was their form of entertainment, and they did something like that for every single tip. It was good. They did that. For me, it's almost like a show. I use my voice. I use different methods to basically put on a show to the dancers. It's my clubs, my dancers get used to that. They get used to me singing all the time and doing new singing calls, performing it for them. Because I was fortunate, because I had so many different clubs during the week, all different levels of dancers, that I was able to basically perform or learn the performance at every single one of those. So it was very, very fortunate for me to be able to do that. I have some dancers that are really good. I have advanced dancers. I have some dancers that dance challenge, that are that help me get the performance right on every single thing that I do. The other way that people sometimes create some sort of entertainment is by choreography. They use their choreography. I know Don does. That's what he uses a lot of times. In his the way that he does stuff. And yes, I have heard Don call. He's never heard me call, but I've heard Don call a couple of times. One of the interesting things is at Caller Lab, you kind of gravitate towards certain people, and I would gravitate towards Don every year at Caller Lab. I'd go sit down with Don and we'd have a long discussion about things. Usually it was about his method of calling, which I admire. His method of calling was great. But I'd spend time with him because I wanted to learn from him. And the way I learned was to sit down and talk with him. Before that, it was Dr. Jack Murtha. I would spend hours with Dr. Jack Murtha just talking to him about how to teach. And it was amazing for me.
In your manual, different performers versus Bing Crosby.
Okay. Let's go back to what I was talking about with the choreography. One of the people that I think is a great choreographer right now, and I don't know if he's with us or not on this session, but that was from Canada, Brian Clark. And Brian Clark, like I, was kind of a what's the word? He would sit at the throne of Dave Stevens and listen to what he had to say, as well as I would sit at the throne of Dave Stevens and listen to what he had to say about choreography. And Brian is really good at it. There are a couple of sequences that I remember that I stole from Brian. Completely stole them from Brian. One of them was, let's see if I can. It was a sequence where everybody was unsymmetrical, and you did the very last line was bend the line once and a half, and you're home. And the dancers would go, ooh, and it was really cool. Another one was he did a slide through, how many times? 13 times. Slide through 13 times to the ending or to the result, which was either an Alaman left, right a left grand, promenade, or whatever it was at the time. I got the hiccups now. Let me.
Yeah. But of course, one of the tricks with sequences like the slide through sequence is appropriately choosing the dancers that you're going to use it with. Sometimes, like this little sequence he has right here, any dancers can handle it, no problem. Other times you have to be selective. Which dancers are going to find that material interesting and which ones are going to be so blown away by it that they're going to feel lost. So
she's talking about the two sequences. The first one is slide through once and a half in your home. The second one, which is the harder one, is the one that says, is not slide through, I'm sorry, bend the line once and a half in your home. The slide through 13 times is a hard one. And so people have to be able to do it on their own. They have to know what the definition of slide through is and be able to accomplish that call. If they can't do it, then they can't accomplish the sequence. So you've got to make sure that the people you're calling to, like the Stanford quads, for example, that are good enough to do the movement. I've got a group up in Placerville that can do the movement. But you have to have the right dancers to do that one. So what you're looking for is the dancers to do that ooh or ah or something like that. Once you get that across, then the dancers are really entertained by that. They really enjoy that. That is usually what happens with people who do their showmanship by using choreography. I don't do that much anymore. I do a little bit of it, but most of the time it's a performance. I'm singing, I'm dancing. I remember one time I was in, can't remember where it was that I was out there, and I was calling, and I put on Copacabana, and I did this thing called Copacabana, and I went out and I grabbed the round dance cure, and I started doing cha-cha in the middle of the floor with her, and dragging her all over the floor doing a cha-cha with her. That is a form of entertainment. Dancers enjoyed that. She enjoyed that. So you have to look at what you personally can do. Are you a good dancer? Are you a good singer? Are you a good choreographer? What do you do that is really good that you can use your particular skill in order to help entertain the dancers? I routinely will get out there with a cure, and I'll round dance with a cure on the floor. That's a form of entertainment. The dancers love that. They think it's funny. I find a round dance cure and do it with a round dance cure. John Flora and I used to do that all the time. We do Tango Manita, and I'd grab a rose or something, and I put the rose in my teeth, and I dance the girls' part as we're doing Tango Manita, and you really ham it up.
And hopefully you weren't a boring round dance keeper, because if you were, he'd stand behind you when you were doing a waltz and blow bubbles.
Yes, I would do that.
Other things to lighten the mood, because the important thing is to keep the dancers engaged, keep the dancers interested in everything that's happening.
I believe that the caller and cure need to work together to create a program that entertains the dancers. If the cure is not performing, if the cure is not giving the dancers a good show, then I will do something to kind of bolster that. I will blow bubbles. I will do a soft shoe behind them. I will do something in order to entertain the dancers behind the cure if they're not performing, at least to my satisfaction. So my wife, of course, is a cure. She's a very good cure, and I work with her a lot. So I'm really blessed to have her as my cure most of the time. So I have a cure at all my clubs. We just started up a round dance program in where is it? San Andreas. And so we started that up. So we got dancing started in our area. We wanted to get that started and going. I don't know how many of you, I know Germany has started already dancing. How many of you out there have started calling and teaching square dancing?
Is there anybody?
Anybody?
No,
everybody's muted.
I have. I've got a regular Thursday group.
Okay, and you are?
Oh, that's John Sloper.
It's John Sloper.
Sloper. Yes.
Hey, John. I did see that on Facebook. Yeah, we haven't been able to square dance yet, but we're hoping before too long.
Yeah.
We have a small underground group.
Underground, I like it.
That's hard to dance on the underground, isn't it?
It is.
Not really. We're in a basement.
But you want to make sure the grass is on the right side of you. You don't want to be, in a certain thing. But that's wonderful that you have an underground group in a basement.
Scott, somebody
Yes.
had a question in the chat room.
Yes.
Which I don't want to say for later because you just mentioned it. But
Yes.
doing shenanigans behind the cure. Do you usually let the cure know this beforehand? Obviously, Erin knows you're going to do
it. Actually, no. Most of the time, they have no idea until I'm up there doing it.
Because there was concern that if you get the wrong cure, they might be upset by your disruptions. So
and if they are, that's okay. They'll retaliate, which is good. I like that. Then we get something going back and forth between the caller and the cure.
Most of the time, everybody knows that Scott is 100% there for the dancers. Scott's whole goal is to make sure the dancers have a wonderful time. And most of the cuers know that anything he does is just to promote that. It's just a very, very few times we've run into a few cuers who are just not fun in the least. You could tell they didn't want to be there. Their attitude was just horrible. And those were just those very few times that Scott said, hey, these people need to understand that this is about the dancers, not about them.
One of the times I was calling in the LA area, I was calling there was a cuer and her partner. They would, when they finished cueing, they would sit in the middle of the stage on their side and just sit there and watch the dancers. There are other cuers which are very, very entertaining that I like to work with. One of those is from she used to have that studio in LA.
Eileen Sylvia.
Eileen Sylvia. I used to do a Pirates and Babes dance with her, and it was amazing. It was great working with her. She was very entertaining. We would play back and forth with things. It was fun. It was absolutely fun. John Flora, I loved working with John, because he has this really sick sense of humor, and he would throw the bad jokes out as I was calling, and I'd throw bad jokes at him while he was cueing. So it was a lot of fun. We'd go back and forth with that. My wife is used to me doing stuff like that, so she just plays along with the game. So I'm really fortunate with that. There are many people that, going back to entertainers, look at entertainers. We have names of people that are out there that are entertainers. One of those is, let's see, who's the first one on my list?
First one on your list is Bing Crosby.
Bing Crosby. Oh my gosh, what an entertainer. He had a beautiful voice. He had a wonderful voice. Everybody loved him. He was humorous. He had, all of those movies that he did with
Bob Hope.
With Bob Hope. I mean, they were wonderful. Very entertaining. I loved listening to them. I loved listening to what they did. Sometimes they would do duets. And I think that's another thing that's part of what you could do as a caller to entertain the dancers. Bring another caller up and call in harmony with the other caller. Now, I know some of you are going, ooh, how do you do that? Well, it's not as hard as you think it is. Singing harmony is, I always think of, and we can talk about that later when we talk about voice, but I think of singing harmony like Doe a Deer, the song Doe a Deer, a female deer. Okay. Each one of those notes gives you a harmony note. I call myself, yes, exactly. Those are your harmony notes. You stick with those harmony notes, you can do harmony with anybody.
Then back to these entertainers, one of the things that Scott's pointing out here is the wild difference in the style of these different entertainers, yet they were all very successful. Bob Hope is one. Liberace is one. Elvis is one. Michael Jackson is one. All of these people, their entertainment styles, wildly diverse from the other, but they each were very successful in entertaining people because they found the style that worked for them.
And that's what you need to do. As callers, we need to identify what is our style. What is it that we do that can entertain the dancers? Are you doing it by choreography? Are you doing it by doing something crazy? I was telling Dawn a little while earlier about what I think about an entertainer. An entertainer is the guy who gets out there on the plank, on the ship, and gets to the edge of the plank, and the guy who is willing to jump off the edge and keep going off that plank is the one who's going to entertain the dancers. That's my idea. My idea is to entertain the dancers. Give them everything you've got, 110% of what you have. You know, whether it's your voice, whether it's your dancing ability. I'll get out there on the floor. Now, when I call, some of you will know how I call. You know that I get down on the floor with my dancers. My wife usually stays up on the stage and plays my music for me. And I'm down on the floor with a wireless microphone. I'm calling to each individual square as I go, because honestly, I can't see them otherwise. You know, I'm kind of the best blind sight caller in the world, because I get down there on the floor and I touch the dancers. I talk to the dancers. I communicate with them one-on-one. I get down and I side off of this square, then I go to the next square and I side off of them. And I've got little comments to them as I go. But I'm always on the floor with the dancers. And a lot of times the dancers love that. They love the idea that I'm down there with them and I'm touching them and I'm talking to them. And I'm interacting with them as I'm calling the entire event. And I make my way all the way down to the back of the hall and all the way back up to the front of the hall. I'm constantly doing that. I may even start doing a dance in the middle of the singing call. I'll start doing a soft shoe, or I'll do, something to entertain them dancing wise as I'm coming through the hall. So I'm physically working with the dancers as I'm calling. Constantly doing that. The dancers that come to me love that. It's like they, come to the entertainment. Now see the show. Yes. I'm hearing someone talk back there. You have a comment?
No, I think somebody's just unmuted and they didn't realize they're not muted.
Okay.
So next thing on your list is, make a connection. You just talked about that. You need the famous Larry Ward walking around and talking.
Oh, yes. One of the things that you have to do is you have to make sure that the dancers are enjoying what you're doing. You have to get that feedback. The way you get that feedback is walking around the floor during the breaks and talking to the dancers. Find out about the dancers. Find out where they're from. Find out if they like what you're doing, if they don't like what you're doing, and then you can change if you need to. You can change what you're doing. Sometimes it's the music. There are times that I'm using very, very modern music and they don't like the modern music, so I have to switch to something that's more country western, and they like that better. One story that I remember is I was calling in for Wooden Nickels in the Valley, in San Fernando Valley. I was calling for them, and I walked around and I talked to everybody. And I walked up to this one beautifully dressed woman. I mean, absolutely beautifully dressed. And I asked her, I said, "So what do you think so far?" She says, "I hate your music." And I said, "Okay, I can understand that. We'll see if we can get some music, some square dance music." She says, "No, it's not square dance you're calling to." I said, "Okay, well, I'll do some more 2/4 time signature, which is the boom chicka, boom chicka, boom chicka." She goes, No, it's just not square dancing. It's not what you're calling is not. And I'm going, yeah, that's probably true, because most of the music I use is a 4/4 time signature, which is kind of a standard pop music. So I started using some of that. I went up to the president of the club and I said, "Who is that lady over there?" And he said, "Oh, that's Mike Seastrom's mother." And I said, "Oh, okay." So the next singing call I did was a singing call that Mike Seastrom had given me. He used to, how we used to comp people years ago. We'd record a piece of music and we'd comp somebody the music. He comped me the piece of music. So I did this piece of music that he comped me. And so I'm doing the song, and I get up to do it, and I found out that was the only singing call that he ever recorded that she hated. So I couldn't win no matter what I did there. I was losing the whole battle, but I was still trying to entertain the dancers with everything I know.
And that leads it to be prepared for change and a show
Yes.
constantly reads the floor.
Be prepared to change. Be prepared to listen to what the dancers have to say and change your program if you can. You know, I know sometimes you get a written program, you don't want to change your program. You need to be prepared to be able to change your program at a moment's notice in order to entertain the dancers, because not everybody is entertained by bad jokes. Not everybody is entertained by someone who just sings. You know, they're entertained by choreography or something else. So you've got to be prepared to change. You've got to be prepared to get that feedback from the dancers and change your method as you're calling. What's the next one that I have?
Next is sound problems.
Oh, yes. Sound problems. If they can't hear you, you're useless. You have to make sure that your sound is right and people can hear you. You have to have the best equipment you can buy, that you can do. I use a Maui 5. That's what I use every week. I use a Maui 5. I've also got a Maui 28. A Maui 5 is basically like a Bose L1. The people can hear you. They don't have a problem. I can throw sound to the back of the hall with perfect clarity, and people can hear it. My Maui 5 has 300 watts of power. My Maui 28 has 1,000 watts of power. I use the Maui 28 if I'm in a really big building, so that's the one I use. If I'm in a standard building, I use my Maui 5, and that gives me what I need, because they're what's the term I use?
Linear arrays.
They're linear arrays is what they are.
So it's a different concept than Hilton equipment. Hilton equipment is amazing if you don't know anything about sound. Hilton equipment was designed specifically for people who don't know anything about sound, and that is one of the most important things about Hiltons. And forgive me, I call it sound for dummies, but there's nothing wrong with that because it's good, it's solid, and it's durable. It'll last anywhere you throw it around, toss it up in the air, whatever. Hilton's going to handle it, and it's going to keep working for you.
Jim Hilton was brilliant when he came up with the concept, and he really did a wonderful job creating his record players. I mean, they're just absolutely wonderful, and his newer ones, which have no record player on them, but are just amps with a mixer, like a 4-channel mixer on them. They're brilliant at making the sound come out. Just go back there. One caller I used to know, when you talked about sound, he said, all I do is throw the sound to the back.
I just want to blast to the back.
I just want to blast to the back. And that's really what a Hilton does. It blasts to the back, but it makes it so that you can hear it. They had an equalization on the Hiltons that basically took away a lot of the bass, because what you'll understand is the bass is what makes the sound bounce off the walls, is the bass. If he eliminated the bass, it won't bounce off the walls. So that's what he did. He eliminated the bass and boosted the treble so they could hear it. So he was absolutely brilliant at the sound, creating the sound. I don't use Hiltons
anymore.
And the reason I don't use Hiltons anymore is because I feel that the dancers need better sound. They need more sound. They need the sound to be more like you're in a concert, and they want to hear that. And that's what my sound is like. It's like being in a concert. And so I sing to them as if I'm a performer on the stage, giving them a concert. That's what I do.
Scott,
Yes.
I want to remind you that we do want to leave some time for questions and discussions. So,
Okay, cool. Let's go through.
Okay, well, next you've got hot and cold, and how can you tell? On-off performance, you kind of already touched on those.
Yes, I did.
Programming. So how much more time do you recommend, Don?
well, we usually stop after about 15 or 20 minutes, and you've gone 35. So use your judgment.
Okay, well, we can stop at this point and take questions.
There is one other thing that he might want to throw out there. Does the dance have a theme? A lot of dances, depending on the area, clubs will plan dances that have themes.
I will always do the theme.
We recommend playing with the theme as much as possible. Clubs really appreciate it when you show up. I have a wonderful story I wish I had time to tell about theme dances. But if at all possible, if the club's dance has a theme, play along.
Use it.
Whether it's by costume or whether it's by, like our friend Lawrence Johnstone always plans ahead all of his singing calls so they fit in with the theme of the dance. All of those things can work toward a theme that a club has planned.
Yep.
So, okay.
All of that works. Any questions anybody has?
Well, let me make an observation. One of the things that I gather out of what you're saying, when you try to entertain people in whatever way you want, or whatever, recommending others go on their strong points, and especially when you're playing back and forth with another caller or a cuer, is don't take yourself too seriously.
Oh, never.
Be willing to be uninhibited.
Yes. Walk off
which
the
is
plank.
something I had troubles with for a long time. But
walk off the plank. Get to the edge of the plank and walk right off of it.
I do have an anecdote from a caller in our area, since retired, but was a very popular caller. And before I got to know him, he had this shtick to make himself noticed and what have you. And he used to wear a different hat every dance he called. Maybe it was every tip, but I think it was every dance. And
Yes.
that was before I knew him. And he told me afterwards, he said, unless you plan to do that the rest of your career, don't start something like that. They still come up and ask me about my hat, and I really don't want to wear hats anymore.
Well, I do that. I wear a different hat all the time, or sometimes I'll theme each tip with a hat.
There actually, Don, there was a time when we carried around these giant bins full of props to every single dance. And it was kind of weird, is when we lived in Southern California, and forgive me if any of you are Southern California dancers, as in the LA area, but the dancers really are not very competent. And the choreography that you can use with them is kind of limited. So Scott got in the habit of using all these props and hats and funny things to fill in for the fact that there wasn't a lot of choreographic options.
Or choreographic genius.
And when we came back to Northern California, slowly we realized that the dancers really could get into the choreography and weren't that interested in the silly props and things. But those props still come out once a year at a local festival. We do a Sunday morning, first thing, they call it the Hour of Madness. And we bring out every one of the silly hats and props and crazy things for an hour. And it's quite insane. And it is the very best thing. If you plan a festival, your first session on Sunday morning should be one big hall with the silliest, craziest, funniest things you can do to wake the dancers up and get them in the mood for dancing.
Well, let me throw in another anecdote about cautioning you about that. I didn't, other than it distantly at Color Lab, I'd never met Cal Golden until close to the end of his career when he was calling in New England.
Right.
And I think he did an afternoon workshop and an evening dance, and I went up backstage and talked to him a little, introduced myself, and one of his gimmicks for entertaining was changing outfits on a regular basis.
Yes.
And he's trying to squeeze into this outfit that he'd had for many years, and I can relate to that. There's a lot of stuff I can't wear anymore. But he would say, they still want it, so I have to do it. But it didn't sound like he was enjoying it. So
Lee Schmidt in Southern California with his crawdad. He had to do the crawdad. He hated it, but he had to do it every single dance he was at. And he'd get up there and he'd move his hands and do this and go really crazy with the crawdad song and all kinds of things. And he hated doing it, but he had to do it every single time. Don Ho, another entertainer that's out there, hated the song Tiny Bubbles. But every time he was performing, he had to do Tiny Bubbles. He refused to do it after a while, but he still did it because they made him do it.
He grew into bigger bubble. Anyway,
Yes.
Is there anyone we haven't heard from yet that wants to thank Scott, wants to contradict Scott, wants to supplement what he said?
Please contradict me.
Just as a relatively newer caller in all of this, one of the things that I have learned the hard way is when you make the jokes, never, ever, ever make them at the dancer's expense.
Oh,
I was
true.
filling in for Eric Hennerlau one night down in San Rafael, and I had 2 squares, and the 2 squares were not doing the same thing, and they did not do the same thing for a couple of sequences. And I forget how I phrased it, but I said something about one of the squares, and the daggers from the eyes of those dancers was painful. So I have since learned that it's always always the caller's fault, and always never the dancer's fault, and it's never particular dancers or square's fault.
I learned that lesson when I was in Colorado. I was asked to call for Bear Miller, and it was his plus.com, and he was always telling me, man, these people can dance. You know, they won't like it unless you do something really intricate for them and strange and stuff. And so I did, and I was killing them. I was calling stuff that they just couldn't do. And so I had to back off. But again, I learned that lesson the hard way. In that situation, I learned that lesson that you don't do it at the expense of the dancers. Although another caller, you could do it at the expense of another caller. If another caller is out there on the floor, you can pick on them forever and ever, and they will love it.
Every once in a while, well, not every once in a while, almost every dance.
For myself, I know for the issue comes down to the point of like when you cross up dancers or whatever, we have a running joke, at least in my Wednesday club when we were still dancing, is that they say, well, that's number 2. They come back at me, and we go through that for the other side is when a former caller I know, they'd always say it's the recoveries that count. So when somebody's wandering around, and then I'll usually pop in with something, well, they'll get into position and it's just, nobody saw that. And then we'll move on, and we get a good chuckle out of that. But the usual thing is my wife usually keeps track of things. Well, that's 4, and but we get a good time with that. That it's at my account, because I'm not perfect, and they're going, okay, we're good, Yeah,
on almost every dance floor, there is that one person who loves attention, and they like you to tease them and pick on them a little bit. But you have to be very careful to make sure that you're choosing that person who really, really likes you to call them by name.
And you have to throw out a compliment every once in a while just to keep them going.
Yeah, but if you can find that person, and you know for sure that they are somebody who likes to be recognized from the stage, all the other dancers will appreciate that you're picking on that other person, and they'll love the attention.
like Jim Chipman for one.
Yeah.
Jim
Erin?
Chipman was a caller, but for a while, and he loved to be picked on. But sometimes I'll say to the dancers, I'll say, "Nice styling." You find the floor out there, the square that's not dancing as well, and they make a mistake, and you look at them and say, "Nice styling," and they love it.
Erin, you have to be careful when you're picking on one particular person, even though you know he loves it and it gets a good reaction from some. There's the fact that there's some out there that don't realize that you and this person have a relationship. And they're thinking, oh my God, if they're picking on him, they're going to pick on me next. And they could feel uncomfortable.
I suppose that's possible, but I have not run into that. I've only been queuing about 45 years, but I haven't run into that before.
It's something that you have to be sensitive to and make sure that the people know that you have a relationship with the one you're picking on, and
of course,
that's okay, and you're only going to pick on that person.
Again, it's a matter of reading your floor, finding out what your floor likes, what they don't like, and giving them the things that they like.
Yeah, and sometimes they just want you to be deadly serious. Sometimes they don't want any joking around. They want serious dancing. And if that's what they came for, then that's what you need to try to give them. But still, with Scott and I, there's always going to be some lightheartedness. There's always going to be a positive energy. As some of you know, I've had some health challenges in my life. I dealt with 20 years of chronic Lyme disease, and then I just recently went through cancer and cancer treatment. But regardless, when I'm on that stage, when Scott's on that stage, the energy is up. The dancers are our focus. Now, by the time we get the stuff in the car and we're headed home, there may be nothing left, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that the dancers got everything we could give. There is nothing that makes me angrier than seeing a caller who I know is very capable get on the stage and give, I'm going to use this term, half-assed performance. I'm sorry, but it happens. They get up there, they're not really giving it their all. They're just throwing out about 75% of what they're capable of. And then a very good friend of ours one time, I saw him on stage with the Ghost Riders at Nationals, and I went up to him afterwards and I almost slapped him in the face. And I said, that was fabulous, and I better never, ever see you on the stage giving less than that quality performance ever again, because now I know what you can do.
That goes back to the point that if you have two callers that are on the stage, you need to be working off each other. You need to be doing harmony. You need to be doing something to work with each other. There's nothing worse than having two callers up there and they're all singing the same note, or three callers up singing the same note. It just doesn't, to me, it doesn't work very well.
Especially when they're only almost singing the same note.
Yes, you're right.
I want to throw in a showmanship, a quick tip that everybody can use. And that is, while you're calling and while you're talking, smile. Physically make your face smile, because it comes across. It just lifts people a little bit. It makes them not think you're boring. And for me, I have to remember, let's see, smile. That's with the ends up, isn't it?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that my natural expression was just looking uninterested, even though I definitely am, until junior high school, when they nicknamed me Smiley in the yearbook. But one of the ways to do this, if it's not a natural thing, which it wasn't for me, is I've had some pictures of my kid when he was, 1 or 2 years old. You get a picture of this infectious smile. You just catch him at the right time. You can't help but look at it and smile. Or you can find things on the web that way that you just look at, or a smiley face, a yellow round thing with a smile. And I stick a copy of that on the table next to me or next to my mic. And every once in a while I glance down at it and I said, oh, smile. And I put it on and do it for a while. After a while, it gets to be fairly natural. In fact, I think I've learned how to do that here a bit, because I feel that every time I click end session, my face goes, oh. So just a quick physical smile is good. And I do want to throw in another anecdote. I'm sorry for hogging, because I want other people to talk too. But you talk about telling jokes, and Ed Foote, and there was a caller in our area, Ed Ross Smith, who people enjoyed listening to their jokes. Not that their jokes were good, they were corny, but just listening to the person making a fool of themselves by telling another corny joke.
Yes.
And I was driving home from a dance once with my first wife. I don't have that ability. And she said to me on the way home, she said, Donald, and I said, yeah, if you ever have the urge to tell a joke while you're on stage, don't. and I found that fairly effective until groups really know who I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, anyone else besides Scott and myself and Dan? Daryl has his hand up. He's pointing.
Oh, good.
Yes, I'm probably one of the very, very few left that can call Scott Little Scotty Byars.
Yes.
Because
true.
we've known each other that long, haven't we?
Indeed, sir.
Yes. Nice memories as you're going through talking about Cal Golden and those. And that's a good thing to think about. Marv Linder stood on his head.
Yep.
Merciful heaven, and called with a Dixie cup out on the floor. One of the first I ever saw that would go out with the wireless microphone. So those things are all good. But what brings it all to mind for me was looking back at the callers that I really, really enjoyed their performance.
Yep.
Most callers, if you're going to remember them, were good at moving the dancers and everything, but the ones that put on performances that were unforgettable, Red Bates, Dick Jones, you say Cal Golden, there were just callers that stuck in your mind for particular reasons. Now, you're never going to be them, but if you stop and think about what it is that you really, really liked about them and can kind of hone in those type of things into your own performance, it's going to help. It's going to help. You need to become a product of what you've experienced. Take the best.
Who is the caller that always called with a guitar?
Dick Ledger.
Dick Ledger.
Dick Ledger, right.
Dick Ledger. Now, his timing and his style was totally different than any other caller you've ever heard. All the dancers was always stepping out on the anchor beat. They were always stepping out on beat one, but he was always entertaining the dancers with that guitar. And he was always doing a fabulous job with it. But, and it's something that really, really gave the audience or gave the dancers a kick to watch him do that. Just amazing caller.
Joe Lewis with his electric accordion.
Oh, yes.
He's an absolute legend in our activity.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. One other thing I'd like to say, Scott, a nice presentation. You did a good job. I think it's important that you at least give the appearance that you're really, really, really enjoying what you're doing.
Yep.
The dancers need to be able to see that at all times when you're on stage.
And that you care.
Yes, that you care. But if you can enjoy what you're doing and give that impression, the dancers are going to enjoy dancing to you. You don't have to be the greatest singer or the best joke teller, all of these other things. It really is important to get that message across that you're happy that you're there.
Daryl, that's a biggie. I've had a lot of dancers come up to me and say, boy, you're really having a good time up there.
Yeah.
And part of your good time, making yourself have a good time, really projects across. That it's part of the smile that I mentioned before. The other thing is, as a caller, I have a good time up there. I enjoy entertaining people. And so just let it come through, and it gets through to the dancers.
I really do love what I'm doing.
You mean you're not doing it for the money?
No, are you kidding? You'll never get rich as a caller unless you're Lee Kaufman. But no.
As Scott said earlier, there's many different things you could excel in, as your singing or your joke telling or your what have you. Figure out what your strong point is and emphasize it. Daryl, one of the real entertainers you mentioned was Red Bates. And Red Bates is one of the people I use as an example of, he was totally deadpan. He really didn't do much expression and what have you. But his timing, his choreography, his whole presence was very entertaining. So he knew what parts to stress and what parts not to.
Right.
Yeah. There was a caller in Southern California named Lee Vogelgesang. And Lee Vogelgesang was really not a very good caller. He didn't get people home. He couldn't sing. He really wasn't very good, but his dancers would walk through fire for him because he cared about those dancers. He let them know how important they were to him. And the ones that danced with him every week would have done anything for him because he let them know how much he cared. And in the end, I mean, yes, the dancers want to dance. The dancers want to hear good music. The dancers would not mind hearing you sing well. They wouldn't mind doing interesting choreography. But in the end, they want to know that you care about each and every person on the floor. And if you can communicate that to them, you can work on learning a lot of the other stuff. But the caring part, that really has to come first. All the other things are skills that you can learn.
You know, you were somewhat mentioning the different crowds expect different things. And that brings to mind, I went to a caller's dance once or 2 or 3 different guys that, pick a tip in the evening and would have you crawling on the ceiling. And I said, oh, that's a good performance thing. I'm going to work on that. And I would try, and I'd get them heading over to the wall, but they'd never crawl up the walls to the ceiling. And so I asked my mentor, who was Jim Mayo, what do you do? How do you make that happen? And he said, well, you do this. And well, I tried that. And you also do this. And I tried that. And you also do this. And I tried that. And then you do this. Oh, really? I hadn't tried that yet. And I was able to really, and I would try generally 1 or 2 tips an evening, to 3rd or 4th tip, just after everybody's going, to do a real rouser and try and get them close to the ceiling anyway. And with Jim's techniques, I was able to do pretty well on that. Well, anyway, one day I was calling for a club that was very good dancers. It was down in Connecticut. And come 3rd tip, I called a rouser and they didn't rouse. And I said, I'm going to get these guys excited. And so the 4th tip, I pushed harder. And by the 5th tip, I had them bouncing around and what have you. And I said to myself, they don't want to be bouncing. They don't want to be entertained. They want choreography. This is working too hard to get here. And so I just backed off and let them dance. And it was, the nature of the group. They didn't want to get excited. They just wanted to dance. So you got to, as Scott said, pay attention to what, change your approach, your program, depending on what the situation is.
The dancers expect sometimes. For example, if you're following Dave Stevens in a pace situation, you want to be able to do choreography that the dancers want to dance. You have to be able to do that or you won't survive. Calling for quads, for example, they want to dance. You want to give them really creative choreography. You don't want to just throw the calls out. You don't want to try and entertain them, but you can. I mean, with me, it's almost like I can't help it, but I've got to sing, kind of thing.
And actually, you know what? There's one really important thing that we didn't cover. That's if we have, I know technically we're over in 1 minute, right? as long as nobody that runs away. But one
Keep
thing,
talking.
Scott, that you didn't talk about was building a singing call. And you really
Yes.
need to touch on that if you can.
Well,
You know, I'm going to let you do that in a minute, but because it is the hour, which always goes by very quickly, I'm going to make an official ending, and then, as we very frequently do, carry on and have the good conversation afterwards. But for those, this is basically for those of you that have only set an hour aside and have to leave. You don't have to feel guilty about leaving. Jeffrey, Gesundheit, nice seeing you again, which is our 6th country and continent showing up. I would like to thank Scott and Erin for making us think, giving us some ideas this morning, today. I'd like
for some it's evening.
Yeah, I would like to thank Dan for doing the engineering and keeping those muted that should be, except he's got to work harder on muting me because I talk too often. And most of all, thank you guys again for showing up, for coming, for staying, for partaking. We haven't had as much participation this time. So with that, we're officially done. Leave if you must, but please hang around because this is where the good stuff starts. And feel free to interject your things, and I will try to let that happen. Scott, tell us about programming a singing call.
Well, the thing is when you're doing a singing call, you want to build it. You don't want to start out at high energy right at the beginning. You want to start out basically pianissimo and then build it until it's a forte. And just keep building and keep building and keep building until it's there at the top, till the energy is there at the top. A good example of that would be,
Tony.
well, yeah, Tony Oxidine is a good example of that. He really builds a singing call well. If you haven't had a chance to listen to him build a singing call, listen to him do that. He does a great job at that. Deborah does that. She does a really good job at building a singing call, but she has a wonderful voice and she looks good. So you expect that out of her.
There's a really popular song from the 60s or 70s by a guy named Bobby Hebb, and the song is called Sunny. And yes, there is a singing call, but I urge you to find the original song on YouTube or whatever and listen to it all the way through. He starts off singing the song with a very nice voice at a very medium type energy, and he slowly, each verse of the song, he builds up higher and higher till at the end of the song, he's got tons of energy coming out. And that's exactly the type of thing that can make your singing calls go over the top. So find that song, Sunny by Bobby Hebb, on YouTube and listen to it.
There are a lot of singing calls that do that, that will help you build. I'm trying to think of the one, it's an old song.
Well, one that you do a lot is Devil Went Down to Georgia, and you could really build that one up.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of one that's really, really old and
like you?
Yeah, kind of like me. And Daryl would remember this song.
Hey. I was going to suggest, now I know that these days for the newer callers, you downstream everything. But if you have a mentor that's been around for as long as Don and Scott and I'm sure that they'll still have some plastic records that go back to the days of Dick Jones, the old wagon wheel records.
Yep.
One that comes to mind, not a particular song that comes to mind, but a style of building singing calls. The wagon wheel records, Ken Bauer in particular.
Yep.
When I was listening to one of his new releases, I'd listen to the beginning, I'd go to the middle break, I'd go to the ending. And yes, definitely they saved the very, very best for the end of the singing call. Programming is an issue all in itself. There's a whole lot of things about programming, not just a singing call, but each tip, each dance, yeah, and building. Basically, you build the same throughout all of them, no matter what it is. Each tip should be programmed in a particular way.
And it has its own individual.
The record you might be trying to remember is False Hearted Girl.
No.
By Dick Jones used to do that False Hearted Girl just outlandishly good. Go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just can't think of the song.
These boots were made for walking?
No.
Do you remember anything about it?
If you want to listen to somebody building a song on a regular basis, as Daryl said, listen to Ken Bauer, not only his recording, but his YouTube things. He's a master at that. And as somebody told me about Dick Jones when I was trying to learn about this, Dick had a different approach. He wouldn't start slow and build. He would start really high and then go up from there. He had the ability to continue. He would start at our high and then carry it higher and higher and higher. I only got to dance to Dick once, but heard a lot of recordings of his.
That's hard to do.
Yeah. Scott has done some amazing workshops for one of the local colors associations in the Santa Clara Valley. So that's like San Jose, Silicon Valley area, where each of the callers would choose a singing call and get up and perform it. And then he would coach them on how to build that particular singing call to help them understand what the process is. And it's too bad, that would be really complicated to do over Zoom. But they were some fascinating workshops because he tailored each set of instructions to that individual caller and what would work for them. And that's one of the toughest things about a caller school or any session like this, is that each one of you is an individual, and each one of you has to work within what your individual strengths and weaknesses are. But you can take a basic idea like building a singing call and make it happen for you in a way that works for you.
One of the showmanship techniques I saw 2 or 3 different callers using, and then I adapted it. Was
Congratulations.
was doing 2 singing calls in the same tip and contrasting the heck out of them. Now there are 2 ways to do that. One is you do a slow, calm, relaxing thing, and then you put the second singing call on and just come on gangbusters, and the contrast is amazing. There are other times you build a song till it's pretty tight, and then you contrast it with one that's really slow and what have you. And depending on the time of the evening and what have you, that has a great showmanship effect. I will usually start that with a very well-phrased patter call and have them do a grand square, circle left element. I'll introduce it by saying, now this tip, nobody's going to make any mistakes. I'm counting on you guys to do it right. Now I'll do, a grand square, a circle left element, left promenade home, and bow to your partners and corners too. Gee, you did well, just like I thought you could. But the reason we made it short is because we're actually going to do 2 singing calls, and we'll all do 2 singing calls. And again, sometimes you just want to contrast those from low to high or high to low, and the effect is, I think the first time I saw Ken Bauer doing from low to high, boy, did that high send everybody through the ceiling.
Indeed. One of the things that that I always say is, if you're going to do a multiple caller dance and you're following another caller, never do the same type of song. If they do a melodious, beautiful voice song, then you do one with high energy next. If they're going to get up and they're going to do something with high energy, do something with something that'll show your voice. Do something slow and melodious. Never, ever, ever do a singing call that you don't do well, or especially that you don't like. If you don't like a song, don't do it. You know, a
Scott,
lot of people make a mistake and they do songs that everybody's doing, and they try to do that because it's the latest thing. You don't want to do that. You want to do the thing that you do the best. Put your best foot forward always.
one of the few nationals I went to, Scott, I had this really lively song prepared, and the guy before me did a lively song, and so I switched gears and dropped back to contrast him with a slower one.
Right.
One of my favorite stories, I hate to poke in these things, but a caller, New England caller, popular, since passed away, named Tom Potts, used to like to tell the story at the New England convention. Some guy, he was programmed to go, and some guy was on just before him and really had the floor rousing and you know, climbing on the walls and what have you. And as he's walking off the stage and Tom was walking on, he whispered to Tom, "Let's see you beat that."
Ah, okay.
So Tom got up on the mic and he said, "Wow, wasn't that great? That was super. Everybody obviously loved it. Let's bring him back for another one." And
Oh,
Tom
no.
gave up his spot to get revenge on this poor guy. Beautifully done.
One of my favorite tricks is to use a what are they called? It's a decibel meter. If I used to carry it in my case. I was following Deborah. Now
Actually, this one was Johnny Preston.
Was it Johnny Preston?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, so I'm following a call. I pulled out my decibel meter while he's out there. I'm on the stage and I'm looking at my decibel meter, and then I pick up the microphone and I say, you know, I'm on next, and I just saw that he had an 83 on the decibel meter when everybody clapped. So I need an 85 at least. And I held up at the end of my tip. I held up the decibel meter, and everybody went wild. It was crazy. So sometimes you have to beg for it. It works if you beg for it. But
and aside on those decibel meters,
yes,
the gentleman, a square dancer that used to work for General Radio Corporation, who invented those things and created the first one that GR used to sell for really expensive before Radio Shack got them affordable.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Is also the person that designed, he was a fellow in the Acoustics Institute of America or some such thing. He's also the guy that designed and built Yak Stacks. He was the original designer. He knew his acoustics. He had the anechoic chambers of General Radio to work in. And the Yak Stack is designed with an awful lot in mind of being able to be heard and understood by the dancers, and not waste energy reflecting on that. That's I might even do another talk on column design, because it's pretty important to understand to get the most out of your equipment. But anyway, while you mentioned the decibel meter, the handheld decibel meters, Irvin Gross.
I'm going to loan everybody something that I've used for decades. And it's a short phrase after the first tip, regardless of how it goes. But it goes something like this: you might as well go ahead and have a good time, because I don't get any better than this. That was it. And it just kind of breaks the ice in a little way. It doesn't hurt to have a few phrases like that you can use during your program.
Yep. Nice dancing. Good flow. Yeah.
Come on, we want to hear from somebody else. Tell us how we've tried some of these things and they don't work.
So I just tossed one out that Scott used a bunch of examples of entertainers from previous generations. Somebody who's, I forget how I was listening to some vocal or some song for reference recently and ran across Dave Grohl being interviewed. Dave was a drummer for the Nirvana and is now with the Foo Fighters.
Okay.
And if you want a modern entertainer who is really good at interviews and has the mannerisms and characteristics down that really make it do good good interviewing and good entertainment, no matter what he's doing, whether he's playing drums or not. Grohl is worth a little YouTube time.
Okay.
Just because one of the things I'm conscious of with square dancing is we all tend to be looking towards a few generations ago in terms of entertainment. All our songs come from the 60s. And yeah, I'm trying to find more kind of modern examples to look at as I develop my own skills and characteristics.
Sure.
We are constantly adding new music to Scot's patter collection. And I basically, anytime that I'm in a restaurant, grocery store, any place that's got music playing, I'm paying attention. And I will often pick up songs that I hear there. And actually, sometimes I steal them for myself to write rounds to, but a lot of times I find them as good patter music. And if the song really has a good beat and doesn't have anything offensive lyrics-wise, I don't care the age of your dancers, they're going to appreciate it. Every once in a while, you get somebody who's a little grumpy about it and they want, only country western or only older music. But for the most part, if you can use the music well, the dancers will appreciate the music. But never turn your ears off. Constantly be listening and trying to come up with music, that you just, and, every once in a while, it's not a brand new song that you heard, but sometimes it is. One song that Scott uses for patter that's not new, but everybody loves is, somebody's leaving. Yeah.
Carol's headed out. Yeah. Keep talking.
Is Pablo Cruz, Love Will Find a Way. That is just a fabulous patter song. It's really, it's got a lot of great beat going on in there, and the dancers really appreciate it. So check that one out. It's not a new song, but it goes over extremely well.
Yeah.
Cool.
But always be listening for that new music. It's out there.
And everybody knows about Shazam, right?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
You tell them anyway, Dan, just in case.
And Hot Dog.
Yeah. So I don't know Hot Dot, but Shazam is an app for your phone which identifies and keeps a list of the songs that you have listened to.
You're right.
When you
That's right.
press record on it, press identify on it. So it's fantastic for that. I'm in a restaurant and hearing a snippet of music and want to know what it is and keep it for later so that I can find it and re-edit it into pattern music.
Your Apple products now, you can just ask Siri, and not quite as good as
Shazam,
but much quicker to get, because I know that whenever I hear something and start singing along and think, oh, that'd be good, by the time I find my phone, by the time I unlock it, by the time I find Shazam, they're on to the next song.
Right.
You got to train yourself to respond to that quickly, but Siri does a pretty good job, and there's a couple of fewer steps to get there. And, just ask Siri to open Shazam.
So sometimes Siri doesn't even talk to me. It's my problem. I'll ask Sarah, hello, Siri, and won't say anything. Won't even look at me. It's not even doing it now.
Yeah, but Shazam is an excellent tool, and I use it basically when we're out, because very often what you would think would be the name of the song based on the lyrics turns out not to be the name of the song at all.
Yep. So music is important, using the right kind of music. The dancers will appreciate it if it's good music. I know that.
Can I add something too here, just as far as entertainment and just like the success of the dancers being the imperative, I guess it should be?
Yes.
There's been a couple callers that I've danced to recently that would call something a little out of the ordinary and the floor would break down. And they call it again and the floor would break down. They never walked through it. So you made a couple comments there about backing off on some of the choreography. We need to be aware. Part of our job as entertaining, again, making them successful. And if something is constantly breaking down, you either need to say, okay, fine, we're not going to do that, or get them through to where they succeed. This one caller from in the area, more or less, I won't dance to anymore because this one dance, like 3 tips, wouldn't walk through them. 80% of the floor broke down. And it's like, that's not our job, you know, and that's part of the entertainment needs to be making sure that the dancers succeed. And so that's my little 2 cents worth.
However, that's true, but also understand there's some areas like in Southern California. Southern California does not want you to do a workshop at all, period. So anything like that, they consider a workshop, and they will admonish you for workshopping the floor, for doing something like that. They want you just to dance, and whether the dancers can do it or not, they don't care. They want you to just call.
So basically, you dumb the material down until they can do it.
So you have to keep dumbing the material down until they can do it. There's certain lists that you don't use anymore. When I'm calling in Southern California, sometimes I won't call peel the top, or I won't call peel off because the floor can't do it. So they won't do the calls. So John, I don't call those calls.
It's a very good point, John. Dancers like to say, we want to be challenged, but in reality, they want to be challenged but win. So what they really want is not a challenge, but a little bit of variety. And if they don't even want variety, you know, let them dance. We as callers have to have a control, and it takes time, and maybe it's something I should talk about my thoughts on it sometime, but control of the difficulty of the choreography that you're delivering.
Yeah, well, my point there is basically if they're not being able to do it, if you're not able to workshop it, don't call it again.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. True, I agree.
Well, I want to just jump in and put in my 2 cents, and there'll be several people that absolutely disagree with me. But I think part of the issue in the square dance world is the fact that we have dumbed down the system. We have a set of mainstream calls. And as a mainstream caller, if I go to a dance, I should, notice I said should, be able to call any call on that list and expect those dancers to be able to execute it. But that's not what we do. We say, oh no, they can't dance it, I can't call it type thing. Instead, what should be happening is those dancers should be going back to their club, their instructor, whoever taught them, and say, I could not dance what the mainstream caller was calling at this mainstream dance. Teach me to dance this call. But we don't do that. We go back and go, oh, it's okay that you can't dance it. We just won't call it. So I think we are the only organization that has dumbed down our program to the level of, we've lowered the bar instead of here's the bar, because people meet where the bar is. If you set the bar and keep the bar, people will raise to the occasion. It's proven, but we don't keep the bar where it is. We call it mainstream, but it's no longer mainstream. Mainstream is basic. We don't use mainstream calls. And that's part of where we are and why we are with dancers that can't dance. We also have teachers that can't teach. Not everybody is good at calling. Not everybody is good at teaching. And we need to kind of sort out who does what well and say, oh, they're a good teacher in my area. Let's send all of our people over to them to teach so that the teaching can do well. And if they're not a great caller, then somebody else picks up, you know, work on each other's strengths rather than everybody trying to do everything and dumbing everything down.
Well, Janet, the other thing too is the difference between, is this a dance, you know, also known as a hoedown or a party dance, or is this a class? One of the things that makes a difference now, Scott and I, during normal times, Scott and I are busy. He calls 8 programs just on weekdays every week, and then our weekend programs. If we have a free weekend, we go to a dance. And if we are at that dance, we can observe how our dancers are doing. And he can watch and say, oh, this group needs work on such and such. That group needs work on something else. But at a party dance, you want to make sure the dancers can dance and have a fun time. Maybe what needs to happen is if you're doing a party dance and some of the dancers aren't accomplishing what you're trying to help them with, you might want to interface with their club caller and call them up and say, Joe, I was calling to a group of your dancers last night, and they really had trouble doing such and such a call. They might be able to use a little workshop on that.
Joe, your dancers can't dance.
Yeah. Well,
Janet, I completely agree with you. Some people are going to disagree with what you just said, and I'm one of them. Well, in particular, back when there were lots of experimental calls that people would workshop just for variety, disposable experimentals, and dancers would like a particular call and they go back to their club caller and say, oh, so-and-so taught us this. How come we don't know it? Teach it. You don't want the dancers creating your program. You want to create your own program.
That's true.
And when I would call, they'd have large dances in the area for, halfway through lessons. And since everybody was teaching almost the parallel order, but not necessarily, if I would call something that 2 or 3 squares couldn't dance and the other 18 could, they'd come up to me and say, oh, we don't know that call, teach it to us. And my comment would be, no, you wait till your teacher teaches it to you, and I will just not use it for the rest of the evening, because this was a place for me to come and entertain people, not a place for me to teach the few that hadn't gotten to that point yet. I was capable of doing plenty of entertainment without using that particular call. So it's not really a dumbing down, but if you do what Scott and Erin just said, and you notice your dancers at another dance having troubles, you might want to take note of that and bring them up to that. It's not, you got to use your judgment one time to the next.
I videotape everything. And so I go back and I watch the videotapes. And so when I do my lessons and my teaching, I know exactly what I need to teach and who I need to teach it to, but they don't realize that's what's going on. And usually I not end up teaching to the new people. I end up teaching to the old people, the experienced dancers who never learned how to do the call correctly. But video doesn't lie.
Unfortunately, I've had times that mostly audio recordings and you make a slight mistake and it comes back and gets louder every time you listen to it.
Yeah.
Mel, you've got your hand up, but before you talk, Steve, you had your hand up quite a while ago. Tell us what you're thinking.
I'm good. I just completely forgot what I was going to say now.
Oh, okay. Mel, I'm sure you didn't forget what you want to talk about.
No, it's just a follow-up on what Janet was saying, and I've heard this a lot. I'm getting this a lot from a lot of the readers of Behind the Mic as well. There is a tendency of what you call dumbing down, and then there's a tendency of what some callers call dumbing down, which is, in many cases, an abuse of the choreography for what it is you're trying to present. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you can be innovative, you can be interesting, you can call a full program without going way out in left field and making it so difficult. The other side of that coin is what Janet is saying, and what you were saying, Dawn, or I think it was Dawn. There's some places you go, you wouldn't even dare to call some of the movements on the list, and I've actually experienced that in some part of the States. When I went down to a dance and I was, it's a full plus dance. Oh, but we don't do wrong way dar. Oh, but we don't do box the net. Oh, but we don't do this. That particular thing is not, and I've got to stress it because the comment that we're getting a lot of is, why are we dumbing this down in a lot of our writing? A lot of callers are going back now that Square Dance magazines and the collar text and all these things are online, and they're looking at the choreography, they're looking at what's there, and they're finding a lot of trouble with it, mainly because they don't use that. We as callers don't use that. Well, that's not true. We as callers do use a lot of stuff. It depends on where you are geographically and where you are within reason. I know when I came here to Australia, I noticed there was a massive dancing level difference between here in Australia and a lot of the clubs in Canada. I noticed when I moved to Canada from Germany, there was a massive difference in the dancing capability and the dancing levels in Europe than there was in Canada, than there wasn't in certain parts of the States. And in some parts of the States, it was extremely high. In other parts of the States, it was extremely low. It's a matter of what they want on the floor. But unfortunately, a lot of the times, the dancers do not know what they want. And what Dawn was saying there about, there's a lot of stuff I can do, I just won't use that movement, is absolutely correct at an open dance. You can call an entirely innovative and complete program without using a spin the top all night, or without using a right and left through, for that matter, all night. You can do that. But where we're falling apart is not the dancers. The dancers only know what we taught the dancers. And I hate to say it, but individual dancers are incredibly intelligent. Collectively, dancers are like people. They're incredibly stupid.
They are people.
No, they are and I don't mean that derogatorily. I mean, collectively, dancers know what we taught them. And
yes.
If we say that the dancers can't dance, that's because we can't dance. That's because we can't teach. They don't know that. They don't know that difference. So in that aspect, dancers are collectively not that smart. And the reason they're not that smart is because we have made them not that smart. You're saying exactly the same thing that you see stereotyped on television about American high schools. Watch any high school movie or any movie today that there's a high school content, and what have you got? Oh, well, it's a problem with learning, and it's not a student or an individual student. It's collectively because they can't learn, they can't do this. That's not everywhere, and that's not the school system. That's the breakdown of us to put that into the process right now. I think you're absolutely correct, Don, with what you said. And Janet, you've identified a very significant problem, and it would be an excellent discussion, Don, to tackle.
We need to turn it around, though. We need to say things like, if my dancers can't dance, that's my fault, not theirs.
One rule that I have always taught my dancers right on the very first night is, if the floor has a problem, or if you break down or something happens, blame the caller. They get paid. Now, I say that tongue in cheek, but I also say that with all sincerity. If there's a problem on the dance floor, it's not a dancer's problem, it's a caller's problem. And I don't care if it's an individual dancer that is really, really slow, or it's an individual dancer that just doesn't get it. We as a team, I hate losing students. I will fail students, but I hate losing students. But I'm not going to lose them because I'm going to not teach them properly. I'm not going to do with them what should be done. I noticed this in Australia a lot of the time. You get there and you'll call a dance, or the dance will be called. You get, heads pass through, wheel around, and lead to the left. No, absolutely. Sorry? Why are you going?
I went, ooh, because the flow on that sucks for some people.
Yeah. And now you get that, but you'll get, instead of a right and left through or a pass through part to trade, wheel around is used phenomenally well. Reverse wheel around is used phenomenally well. And this is where we get the differences. You get a movement that is used, and then you get a movement that is used technically properly, but incorrect. Oh, that didn't feel good, so we're not going to use that movement anymore. We're not going to dance that movement. And we take it out of the program we take it out of the program to make it easier for the dancers to dance, rather than actually put it in the program where it belongs in the program, so we as callers can make it usable for the dancers to dance. Yeah. And a lot of Australian callers are really, really good at using a full program with a lot of innovation and variety at lower levels.
Well, in caller school, we have to avoid, we do a lot of games to avoid things that don't flow well. We tell the callers not to call things that don't flow well. For one of those dancers, if you said pass through, you said wheel around, and then lead to the left, one of those dancers it's very jerky for them. It does not flow well. So that would not work for in a caller school.
And yet the argument is, why do we do right and left through and lead left?
Better than lead to the right.
I
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, it's
don't
just
do
little
that.
things like that. It's not a matter of the movement. I use that specifically as an example because a wheel around is a phenomenal movement. But when you look at something where it causes a problem or a hiccup, oh, let's walk away from it. No, let's not walk away from it. Let's find a way to use it properly. Let's use what a program is. I agree with what Janet says. The basic list, the mainstream list, the plus list, etc. They are not goals or targets. They're an administrative list that says, if this dance is advertised at this level, these are the movements you should be able to dance these movements from a standard position. That's all it is. It's an administrative list of figures that you should be able to dance.
But at the same point, you have to look at the flow. If the flow sucks, why would you call it?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm not saying call bad choreography. Don hit the nail on the head. You can call a lot of really good choreography. If a movement hasn't been taught and you're at an open dance, don't use that movement. But if a movement causes problems, go back and reevaluate yourself. Don't just drop the movement. Look at how you're using the movement. If you're using, heads right and left through, lead to the right, well, it's technically correct. Well, no, it's absolutely terrible body flow. Well, don't stop using lead to the right or right and left through. Have a look at yourself and see if you can make what they can't dance danceable, because 99% of the time the problem lies with the caller and not the dancers.
Yeah, and if your dance is always like that, if every sequence and everything you do is jerky like that, then the dancers will go home tired and they will not want to dance to you again.
Absolutely.
Is the problem. So we have to have some self what's the word I want? You're not listening to what I'm saying.
I am listening to what you're saying.
Self-evaluation.
Oh, thank you. Self-evaluation.
Just not that about.
And by the way, video works well for that when you videotape what you do also.
Right.
That was the second part I was going to mention, Janet. Thank you. I forgot about that. You videotape the dancers to watch the dancers to see how they're doing and see where their problems are. You really have to critique yourself as well as the dancers when you're calling.
Yeah. About a year ago, Scott and I went to a dance not too far away, and I'm not mentioning any callers' names because both of these callers are really well known. And there are two callers on the program. Both have been calling a really long time, and both are extremely well respected. And there was a little problem with the surface on the floor. The floor was a little sticky, not the best dancing surface. As the afternoon went on, I realized that dancing to one of the callers was a beautiful, smooth, flowing experience, and the floor, the quality of the floor did not bother me at all. But when dancing to the other caller, who was actually a little more well-known, I was more tired. I felt like I was fighting against the floor. And of course, I'd experienced these things in the past, but it was just having those two callers juxtaposed at the same event to realize that it was definitely a quality of choreography that made the difference in having more energy, being able to deal with this floor that was not easily, that was kind of sticky and uncomfortable.
Now you realize we're talking to callers, so you can't use $75 words like juxtapose.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, evaluate that when you're out dancing. Pay attention. Do I get tired when I'm dancing to this person? Do I flow through the moves so smoothly that I don't even notice that that I'm expending this energy? Do I feel more energized after the dance than I did before? Evaluate those things and make some little notes to yourself, and then talk about why you felt more energized dancing to one caller as opposed to another one.
Yeah. I always analyze whoever I'm dancing to. I'm always analyzing the caller, finding out what they did well and what they did poorly. And if they do it well, I usually steal it. I
It's
steal
called
it.
research.
Yes.
I was told many.
I do a lot of stuff that Daryl's called. So I have that in my research. Yeah.
Scott, I was told many years ago, it's easy to pick out what the other caller's doing wrong, but that's not what you want to emulate. So work on picking out the things he's doing right and learn from that. However, as a caller coach, you've got to work on picking out what the caller's doing incorrectly.
Yes.
So that is if you are coaching him.
That's correct.
And then pick of the 13 things he's doing incorrectly, pick the one that's easiest to help him better himself at.
Yeah. I am also reminded of that night when I was probably about a year into being a club caller, so still pretty new at things. And I went to a Jet Roberts dance, and I recorded Jet
that was
calling
a mistake.
challenge piece by piece, and carefully transcribed it out. And I transcribed it and printed it with all of the formations all the way through. And I tried to call it to my usual floor, and it was an absolute disaster.
Yep.
And now I could probably call something similar, but I would not call Jet's choreography. I would call my choreography.
That's a wise thing. Wise choice. I grew up
even if it was the exact same calls and the exact same sequence. Yeah. Anyway, go Scott.
We've known Jet since he was 9 years old. So yeah.
So about as long as it's been calling.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
This brings up another good point that I heard many years ago. If you get to call a guest tip someplace, don't try to impress them with some interesting stuff. What you do is call what you know and what's comfortable for you. And because your style is slightly different than everybody else's, because everybody has their own style, that in itself, your style that you're comfortable with, will be enough variety for them, so they will appreciate the variety in it. And plus, you do a much better job if it's something you're comfortable with.
That's true. But you have to make sure you know what you're doing. Don't get out there and call something that you heard somebody else do one time and you haven't been doing it, you haven't been practicing it, and you get out and try and call it the first time and it bombs. I always make it a habit when I'm doing a dance that I never bring something brand new into a dance without bringing in a whole bunch of things that I do know that I've been doing. So you surround the things that are new with something that is that you've been doing a long time, and that way you don't make a mistake. You can do one bad thing, but it's like ending an evening with a singing call out of tune. You know, your last note is out of tune.
And that's the one they'll remember.
That's what they'll remember, is that you were out of tune.
But isn't that entertaining them by making a fool of yourself?
Yeah, in a way, yes. If you do it a lot.
Anytime you're doing a guest tip, you're going to be at a disadvantage immediately because the dancers have been hearing one voice the whole evening, and all of a sudden they're hearing a different voice, different inflections, a different style of calling. So they're going to be a little off kilter because of that. So the smart thing to do at a guest tip is do what you know that you know that you know. Don't try to be super fancy. Just do what you know and present a solid program to the dancers, and they'll remember that much better.
Although there's like one singing call that I do that that I particularly try to be bad in, and that is, if you guys remember the song By the Way Glenn Miller Played, Songs That Made the Hit Parade, I interject in there some of the verses, but I do them as Edith. So it's, by the way Glenn Miller played, songs that made the hit parade. And I honestly do it really bad, and the dancers get a kick at it. They love it. G.R. Old LaSalle ran great. Those were the days.
Yeah, but you're also emulating something that's eminently recognizable too from All in the Family.
That's true. You're right.
got kind of a funny story to share. A couple years ago, I was calling at the Kentucky convention, and like about a month prior, maybe 2 months prior, I was YouTubing Charlie Robertson doing Whoomp Square It Is, the square dance rap.
Yes.
And I mean, I personally, I liked it. So I ended up buying it now and practiced it and practiced and practiced it. So come the Kentucky convention, I actually did it. Okay.
In Kentucky.
In Kentucky. Okay.
Oh man. Okay.
And the dancers, of course, you know, I mean, as y'all know, the dancers are a little older. I mean, just the average dancer is, you know, but they loved it. They really did. And the funny story about this, though, is just soon after there, I got booked to call a dance, and they literally put that in my contract for me to do that singing call.
Oh no!
I thought that was hilarious.
Yes.
But just thought I'd share that. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, I've had some interesting contracts come up. People have put things in the contract that's interesting, but I've never had anyone actually do that. I've had people put in songs like Hallelujah. They've written into the contract that I have to do Hallelujah, which is okay because I actually do Hallelujah very well. But I've never had them actually say, you've got to do this rap song.
I've heard callers use a good introduction to a particular singing call. It says, I've had many, many requests about this singing call, but despite that, I'm going to do it anyway.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's the same thing with yodeling. I've had people, you know, people ask me to yodel, and I'll say something like, well, I really don't like to yodel, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Actually, you should tell the story about how you learned how to yodel.
Oh, the way I learned how to yodel was I had to teach myself to yodel. I was asked to go to Monterey and teach the Callers Association their voice. And one of the callers there said, can you teach us how to yodel? And of course I said, yeah, of course, I'd be glad to teach you how to yodel. Until I realized I didn't know how to yodel. And so I had to learn to yodel in about 2 weeks. So I called every caller that I knew that yodeled. I said, send me tapes of how to yodel. And they sent me tapes. And so I learned how to yodel. And so I was able to teach them how to yodel. But I thought that was a little bizarre that I had to teach myself how to yodel first.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think I'm going to have to bow out. It's been fun. We'll see if we can have some fun for next week. Thanks again, Scott and Erin.
Thank you.
And Dan and the rest of you for hanging on. And
thank you all for coming. I had fun.
And be sure to Dan's going to post this, so you'll be able to have fun again by listening to it.
Mel has something he was going to share, but Don will I'll duck out, and anybody who wants to hang out more, we'll hang out more and have more conversation.
See you guys. Thanks.
Later.
Bye. Take care.
All right, Mel, I've enabled sharing.
I was just going with what Don said on when you're teaching, when you're coaching. This is something I put up at every caller school that I run, right on the very first day. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, I see it. I'm having trouble though.
It's a 9 times table. 1 times 9, 9, so on.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I don't know if you can see it, but it just very quickly goes 1 times 9 is 9, 2 times 9 is 18, 3 times 9 is 26, 4 times 9 is 36. Oops, that should be 36.
Right, and 3
5
times
9 is 45, and so on.
Got it. Okay, so why do you put it up at every caller school?
Well,
because it's 3 times 9 is 26 is wrong.
Okay.
I put that up there, and I just say, okay, just look at this. This is what we're going to look at. And I ignore it About 5 minutes later, and you can start hearing the murmuring going on. You can start hearing the talking going on, everything else. And then everybody is going to eventually say, and I'm going, sorry, what are you guys saying? He says, and you notice that the 3 times 9 = 26 was highlighted even. And that's what everybody talks about. That's exactly what we as callers are doing to our dancers. That's what we as callers are doing to other callers. The whole lesson of that timetables is everybody is focused on 3 times 9 is 26. That's one thing wrong, and not one person is focused on the other 9 things that are right. And we do that a lot. We do that to our dancers a lot. It's like Don was saying, there's a movement there. If there was 10 movements on the floor and they didn't get the 3rd movement, well, don't use the 3rd movement. That's not the place to fix it. However, if you are in a dance and it's a mainstream dance or it's something like that, and that is one of the things, well, it's time that you fixed 3 times 9 is 27, not 3 times 9 is 26, so your dancers can use it. You've got to give them success. That does not take away at all from the other 9 things that you were done or that you did properly on the dance floor. That's where you want to have your focus. That's where you want to build those 9 things that you do absolutely correct, as opposed to that one thing that you do wrong. Take that one thing you do wrong, look at it later, look at it in a different spot, fix it, and then bring it back. That's what we have to start doing to other callers, and that's what we have to actually start doing to our dancers. They do a lot of things right, but if they're doing something wrong, it's not them, it's us.
In my caller school, I tend to do it a little bit differently, kind of the same thing but different. I'll walk up to the whiteboard and I'll draw a line down the whiteboard, and I'll say, okay, what is that?
Yeah.
And I'll hear everybody say, oh, it's a 1. And I'll say, no. And they say, it's a symbol. And I'll say, no, it's ink. It's all it is. It's ink.
Yeah. Or you can do the same. I've seen a similar thing, a line or a dot on the blackboard. And what is that? And everybody's focused on the dot and they totally miss. It's a huge blackboard, or it's a huge whiteboard with a small mark in the center. Look at all that beautiful white. Look at it. It's a field of snow with a rock sitting out in the middle of it. It's all these other kinds of things. We get so hyper focused on one thing. This is what happens with, this is why a lot of dances don't like to have workshops being called. This is why because callers will take the workshop and they'll, oh, I got to do workshop. I got to do something. I want to do spin the top. Okay. I want to do spin the top from waves of 5, rather than I want to just actually look at doing spin the top, maybe boys and girls or same sex. That's going to be my workshop. Take 30 seconds and use it in a dance. We got way outlandish in the workshop, and a workshop has become the death knell for calling. That's why a lot of dancers in clubs don't want to workshop, because that's what they think they're going to get.
Right.
As opposed to a quick, wow, you can do a workshop without even stopping the flow of the dance.
That's true.
There was something to be said about the limitations of records when you were calling, because a workshop was only 6 minutes long. They never got longer than that because you lifted the needle and it was down. You had about less than a minute to teach, but you only had 4 minutes of music. Your reset was once, and that was to resolve, and that's the way you were taught as a caller, and you had to fit that workshop in there. No tip was ever longer than 10 minutes, and that's why the dancers always left the floor feeling fresh and invigorated. They weren't worn out.
That's true. That's very true. Some callers tend to go over. With Dave Stevens, for example, they had to give him a timer, an egg timer, and he had to set the timer, and he had to quit when the timer went off. So he would rewrite his choreography so that he would end the tip on the last beat of music when the timer went off. And that's how he would do it. So what he did is he started working within the timer, and only that, which I thought was an interesting resolve for that.
It was absolutely brilliant to watch him do it, because the music would end, bam, you just barely stepped onto home position and his timer would go off. It was incredible.
Yep.
Meanwhile, everybody's looking and going, wow, that's incredible. And he's got a little button to go, timer. There's the last video, timer.
No,
Timer.
no.
Reset the timer, reset the timer.
But he did reset the record a few times.
It's all part of the show.
Indeed, it is.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean about being asked to do records at things. I get asked all the time for Ghost Riders in the Sky and for Hallelujah as well. And I don't put, a lot of the times, you know, even if I had it in the record box, I would say, oh, I didn't bring that one with me.
Sometimes
It's
you have to
kind
say
of hard
that.
to do that with computers these days.
I know. Or I have the wrong computer.
Mm.
I don't have that one on my computer.
And then you go into, you know, especially if you're at a big hall or something like that, and you go into the other hall and you do that song and you go, whoops.
Yeah. Well, I never run into that problem, but because I never forget the songs that I did. I always remember every song I did. But I one of the things is I remember every mistake that was done to me, done in front of me. I remember every dancer who made a mistake in front of me, and I remember when they did it and what it was and where it was. I remember that constantly. And so I can refer back to it all the time because I can tell the dancers, I always remember what mistakes were made in front of me.
I remember when I was learning to call, it was one of the interesting things, and I was probably annoying as a new caller, as every new caller is. But I never realized just how annoying it could be until I actually became fairly well known as a caller. I used to go up and I would ask somebody like Dave Prescott or Al Stevens or something, you know, at the end of the dance, or we're at the after party afterwards, it can be 2 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, I was dancing to him maybe about 10 o'clock in the mainstream hall. I said, you know, in that third tip you called in the mainstream hall, you did this, 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 and this. How does that work?
Yes. What
And
was that sequence?
It's here. And you go, hell, I don't even remember what I called 5 minutes ago, let alone at this time, because it never dawned on me that we're a fire and forget activity, and we are. I program for my dance. I've got my dances structured. I've got my choreography structured. Not exactly what I'm going to call word for word. I use a lot of modules. I use a lot of themes. I use a lot of structure. But once it's done, it's like it's ticked off. Boom, it's there. You know, it's like ex-wives, you know, and I've got a few of them too. I know who they are. They were there. I had a good time. It was great when it was there, but now it's in the background. That doesn't matter anymore. You know, it's gone. It's pushed aside.
You would say that with my wife here sitting next to me.
Well, I brought it up because I think it was Janet was saying, callers should and the dancers should and this should. And one of my ex-wives' favorite expressions was, don't should on me. You know?
Well, one of the things too that makes programming too much in advance difficult is you never know what you're going to walk into. And of course, you know, I'm very involved in Scot's square dance program, but also being a round dance cuer. I've had nights where I showed up at a club, and we often go to places we've never been before. We very often will go to a club that we've never called for before, might even be in a different state. And we walk in the door and we have no idea what we're walking into.
Right.
They come up to me and they go, hi, we only dance phase 2 steps. Well, if I had planned my dance out ahead of time, that entire plan was completely out the window as of that moment.
Yeah,
so
it would have been nice to know that ahead of time.
Yeah, but you don't, and you're not going to. The chances that you're going to know anything like that ahead of time, even if they tell you, it's probably going to be wrong. So the important thing is to be completely flexible. And I know that as a newer caller, that's more difficult. As you get more experienced, it becomes easier. But try to prepare for several different scenarios.
The contract may say you're calling plus, but you get there and you find out the dancers really dance mainstream.
Yeah, they know 2 or 3 plus calls from standard positions.
Right.
Yeah. They can do Love the Boat from Parallel Waves And
relay the Ducey.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
it.
sorry, from lines facing in. Forgive me for saying that. But anyway, you have to leave yourself some leeway to be flexible. And if you end up, you're running out of material, and throw in a couple extra singing calls with some easy figures, but make them ones that are fun and upbeat. There are lots of ways to work around not being able to do the material that you planned in the beginning.
Okay, I have one question on what you said there.
Yeah.
And I agree fully with what you're saying. But the one thing that struck me is, and I want everybody to be absolutely honest about this, when you said load the boat from parallel waves, how many callers immediately started running that through their head, figuring it out?
Sorry,
I did.
I know Dan did because I was watching his face, and I know Steve did because I could see him going.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Absolutely, because that's how we learn things.
Yeah, I know more about choreography than most callers' wives, but I am not a caller, and I have only called maybe
you might know more about
3 times in my life.
Callers.
Yeah. Maybe, but that's part of that is being a challenge dancer as well. I was once a very competent C2 dancer. I am now a pretty decent C1 dancer, but it's mostly when Scott and other callers are talking choreography, I pay attention. Most wives don't even want to be in the room, but me, I enjoy having a clue. I will, like I said, I've only called once or twice in my whole life, and I was pretty bad at it, but yeah, I still love to critique you guys.
Yes, you do.
It's one of the things that we need more of is, especially as a new caller or as any caller, if you have the opportunity to get dancers together, they will get together to dance, especially if they think they're helping you.
Oh, yeah.
Get a square together and encourage them to give you honest and critical feedback. It's harsh right at the beginning because they're either going to say nothing because they don't want to criticize a caller, or they're going to point out every single flaw. Oh, Mel, that song you did, I really like the music and whatnot, but quite frankly, you can't hit that note or this. And they're not going to be talking choreography initially, but if you persevere with it, it's definitely worthwhile, because dancers, if you can get critiqued constructively by the dancers, you're going to find that your calling is going to improve phenomenally.
It's usually the latter with me. I always get the complaints because my dancers know me too well, so they tend to give me their opinion whether I like it or not.
Yeah, but a lot of times, guys, to know whether your choreography is working or not, you got to get that from body language. You need to watch the dancers. Do the dancers look comfortable on the dance floor? Are they smiling? Are they frowning and looking like they're trying to figure out, are they scrambling to get to position because what you called didn't flow very well?
Are they taking off their shoes to throw at you?
Yes, because a lot of times they don't know if the choreography's bad. They just know that they were scrambling to get there, but then when the tip's over, they kind of forget. So you need to watch their body language and use that as to help you judge whether or not what you're doing flows and works comfortably for the dancers.
That's true. That's how I sight call.
Well, it's in your book. I read it out of here.
Okay. I was pretty smart, wasn't I?
Anyway, Dan, I do want to apologize. I came in a bit late. Took a couple of extra painkillers tonight, and I didn't quite wake up in time, but I'm glad I did come in, even though it was on the tail end of the session. I look forward to watching it.
I hope you're feeling well.
Just back injury. I'm still waiting for surgery. So.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
If the painkillers kicked in, you might be feeling just fabulous, man.
No, unfortunately, it didn't work that way for me. Painkillers don't do anything for pain. They just sort of tend to make me able to sleep.
in Berkeley and in San Francisco, you could probably get drugs that'll work for you.
What I've got, believe me, they're supposed to work for anybody, but they don't work for me. Even the morphine doesn't work well. So.
Yeah,
you can get that's a different story.
You can get that on the street in Berkeley.
We've got doctors here that you can go up to and just say, They don't even ask you what's wrong. It says, what can I get for you?
Yeah.
If you tell them, they'll just write a script out. There are a few doctors like that here.
Where's here?
In the town that I live in.
In Australia?
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
They're not all like that, but there are a few like that. There's a lot of people that will go to the doctor and I need a disabled sticker from my car for parking. Okay, and they'll just write it out.
That's just personal reference. I'm just
don't even examine.
So there's a couple people that haven't spoken up at all. And do any of you have any questions or any insights that you want to add? I see one or two faces there, or just names with no faces, that haven't said anything today.
I think you just scared Mike off.
I did.
Yolanda's on her way out. I think we've probably dragged this out about as long as
probably
as most people. Yeah.
So.
Cool. Thank you very much.
The presentation was okay.
Yeah, I got things to think about, and I've got a whole set of tabs of queued up YouTube videos to watch from Erin's suggestion. So
well,
it will
Dan,
be.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome, and yeah, I hope we get back to dancing so I can come up and harass you, because I'm still waiting on those guest tips that Scott offered when I took the collar school with him, and I haven't gotten up that direction yet.
Well, actually, all you have to do is go down a little bit, because I am still calling in. I still have a group that dances in Vacaville. And
okay.
They're dancing in Suisun City right now.
They're dancing in Suisun City.
When I say right now.
But that's not far from you.
I mean, in normal situations. But absolutely, if you are a newer caller and Scott is aware of it, and you walk into one of his dances, you better be prepared. Or especially a class or workshop.
Bring your music and your microphone.
You better be prepared, because you will not get out the door without doing a guest tip. It's just the rule. So it's absolutely. But yeah, Dan, we're not. Suisun City's not that far from you, I don't think.
No,
I mean,
it's about an hour and 15. I think I filled in for you twice over there.
No, that's Rio Vista.
That's Rio Vista.
Yeah, I'm talking about our normal Friday club.
Oh, yeah, that's just a little bit past. Yeah, that's just a little bit past Vallejo. Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah, it's still a little ways, but it's a lot better than driving an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well.
But no, Scott is 100% for newer callers and giving them an opportunity. So if you walk in the door, you know, he's definitely going to put you up as long as he knows that you're a newer caller. So now it might not be at a hoedown or a Saturday night dance. That would depend on the host club. But if it's one of his groups and again, he calls 8 times a week, just show up. That's all. And
you better bring your microphone and your music.
Yeah. And thank you guys for putting up with me convincing. I have a really bad habit of that, but I do have a few years of experience behind me to back up anything that I say. So
yes.
Don't say anything, Scott. You'll get in trouble.
I'm trying to get in trouble. I'm trying.
Cool.
Just remember, she will always get the last word. She will always give you the last word, as long as it's yes here.
Yeah. True.
Yeah, you would think that, wouldn't you? But
yeah, that's not true.
Scott is a lot more stubborn about that stuff than I am. Anyway, thank you all very, very much.
Thank you all.
Cool.
You did.
All right. Bye, all.
Good night, or goodbye.
Bye.
Or good morning.